If China is honest, then the world would be a different place to live in, totally different place to live in. A revamped world order, peaceful and filled with love. The West is self-centric. Well, Pawan, it's not about China being honest. It's about China being responsible. China is now the world's second largest economy. It's a major world power. It aspires to be a superpower, but it aspires to be exactly the same kind of world power that the US is. It aspires to be a hegemonic, rapacious world power which seeks to dominate all others. It seeks to place itself at the center of the world, the Middle Kingdom. That's what it seeks to do, and that is essentially the problem. It's the world. See, let's be realistic. The world can never have peace and love. Look at the past 10,000 years of history. It's never been about peace and love. It's always been about power. It's always been about control. And whichever power rises does that, but there are different ways of doing that. You don't have to destroy the entire world and dominate the entire world to be a great power. That's not how it needs to be. So look, in the past, India and China have been great civilizations, and they have always existed peacefully, coexisted peacefully. They've never come in conflict with each other. It's only since the 1950s that this has happened. And China seeks to, essentially, if you look at the writings of their generals and their think tanks, they seek to break India into pieces. They seek to balkanize India because they see India as the only nation that can pose a threat to them in Asia. So this is a problem. India does not pose a threat to anybody. India does not pose a threat to China. India doesn't pose a threat to anybody else. Why can't China be like that? But they don't want to be like that. The Chinese Communist Party is essentially an imperial dynasty, and President Xi is the current emperor. So it's not about China being honest. It's about China being responsible, a responsible world power, which it is not. And that's why China is a big threat to the world. And that's why India has no option but to currently align itself with other nations that feel threatened by China, and try to work together with them. And that obviously places India in a situation where it has to cooperate with the US. So that is the deal right now. It's not India's fault that this is happening. It's entirely China's fault. It stems from China's behavior and China's hegemonic aspirations and ambitions. So it's not about China being honest. It's about China being responsible. Please understand, the world will never have peace and love and all that. It's always going to be a world that is filled with various kinds of conflicts, but they don't have to be deadly conflicts. So that is the real deal. The one shows Arunachal Pradesh and Ladakh as part of China. Yes, indeed, that's what Taiwan does. Taiwan claims the whole of China as part of its territory, and it also claims the Indian territories of Arunachal Pradesh and Ladakh, where I am right now, as part of China. So that's very interesting, and that's quite ironic considering lots of Indians express their heartfelt and unconditional support for Taiwan and its independence from China, that sort of thing. And yet the Taiwanese government has the same claims and the same expansionist and hegemonic ambitions that the Communist Party of China has. So essentially it doesn't matter whether it's the ROC that's ruling China or whether it's the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. They both have the same hegemonic expansionist worldview, and they seek to conquer Indian territories and incorporate them into their country. So and the Taiwanese government tries to woo India and the government of India. I remember the Taiwanese president, I forgot her name, she had once tweeted to Prime Minister Modi, I don't remember what it was, and she was hoping for a response from Mr. Modi, and the response never came. And lots of Indians were tweeting below the tweet and requesting Mr. Modi to reciprocate whatever she had done. So Indians, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, are very naive when it comes to geopolitics and international relations. It's not based on emotions and sentiments and all that. It's all based on realpolitik. And the truth is that Taiwan has the same aspirations and ambitions as China. So I think India will, and the people of India will do very well to remember this fact. If China and India can come together, it would be a dream come true. It's a distant dream to bring China and India together. It will be possible only when China withdraws from Tibet. Right, so lots of people express this fond desire or wish that China and India would come together and become, like they would say, friends, and then the world would be completely changed. But let's understand the context to this. I am standing in free Ladakh. Behind me right behind me, there is Chinese-occupied Ladakh. You can actually see, if you zoom in, a Chinese-built highway in Chinese-occupied Ladakh. Now, understand that Ladakh is Indian territory. The people of Ladakh are not Han Chinese. They don't speak Chinese. They don't practice Chinese culture. They have never been Chinese. They practice Indian culture. Tibet. Once again, the Chinese have no business being in Tibet. The people of Tibet are not Chinese. They don't speak the Han Chinese language. They don't practice Chinese culture. They practice Indian culture, a local variant of Indian culture. So China has no business being in these regions. And when you have a situation where China occupies the Shaksgam Valley, which is Indian, the Aksai Chin region, the plateau, which is Indian, and Ladakh, which you see over here, which is again Indian. How do you expect India and China to reconcile and work together? The aggressor is China. India has not been the aggressor. India has not occupied Chinese territory. It's China that occupies Indian territory, and they still keep on trying to grab more territory through their patented salami slicing tactics. So yes, it would be great if India and China could find a way to resolve their differences and work together, but the onus lies on China. Understand this. The problem started with the Chinese. They were the aggressors. They are still the aggressors. So if the problem has to be resolved, it has to be China that takes the first step and withdraws from their the territories they occupy, Aksai Chin, Ladakh, and also Tibet. Because as long as China occupies Tibet, India and China will never be at peace with each other. So India and China coming together may be a dream come true for most people, but it's not a dream that could happen anytime soon. The Chinese and the Russians also had a significantly large disputed border. The Chinese went ahead and resolved the border dispute in the far east of Russia, the Ussuri border dispute. That's been resolved. It was resolved in the first decade of the 21st century. But when it comes to India, the Chinese are adamant on not resolving this issue. They want to keep this border issue open so that they can keep on pressurizing India, because the truth is that they fear India. India is the only nation in Asia that can possibly challenge China. And that's what they're afraid of, and that's why they want to keep this border issue open. And as long as this attitude of China persists, there's going to be no friendship and no cooperation between India and China. So that, unfortunately, is the reality. I disagree with you. It's not the goal of China to have Russia as a vassal. China values the friendship of Russia and the respect which China and Putin share. Both countries, China and Russia, are two different traditions, which makes them unique. Also, is honorable to be able to be a partner and with not a subordinate as an equal. They are too clever to conceive any fractures to destroy the privileged relation with China and Russia. They need each other. You know, I would hate to break it to you ladies, but sentiments like love and peace and honor have no place in international relations. The game of international relations and geopolitics is a dog-eat-dog game. That's what it is. If China and Russia were equal partners, you would not see certain varieties of Chinese behavior. If China did not want to turn Russia into a vassal state, or if China did not covet Russian territory, then you would not see, for instance, the Chinese government surreptitiously renaming certain place names of Russia to Chinese place names. Places like Sakhalin Island, places like the port of Vladivostok in the Russian Far East, and so on. The border dispute that the Chinese and the Russians had was technically resolved in the first decade of the 21st century, but we have to understand that China merely considers this to be a dormant issue that they will reopen when they feel the time is right. So we have to understand how the world really works. We have to be realistic, not idealistic. And China, if you look at their behavioral patterns over the past 40, 50, even since 1950, they are an expansionist hegemonic regime. They seek to expand their footprint and grab other people's territory. This is what happened in Tibet. This is what they're doing in the northern parts of India. They've been doing for a very long time, trying to salami slice territory. They covet Taiwan. They covet almost every nation with which China has a common border. There's a border dispute there, and the aggressor is always China. So please understand that the world it doesn't work based on idealism. We have to be realistic. China sees itself as the center of heaven. It used to call India Tianju the center of heaven. Now it sees itself as the center of heaven, or at least as the middle kingdom. And it seeks to replace and displace the US as the sole superpower. And if they achieve this, Russia will definitely be a subordinate state. Right now, Russia and China are cooperating and collaborating. It's an issue-based cooperation and collaboration. It's not blanket collaboration. So overall, no nation can trust China. Uncle Xi sees himself as the emperor of the world. That's what he aspires to be. So that's just the case. Please subscribe for more updates about my geopolitical fact-finding mission in the Ladakh Valley.